plugged in. So now it still works. The Z key doesn't. That's what will happen when I. Oh, actually, I was going to. I press on the Z key. It doesn't do anything. Sometimes when I press on the A or the S, it appears. So if I want to write amazing, sometimes I have to like go in an S or an A, hoping the S top or copy and paste. Yeah.
Let's go. They'll probably do
Jason spelled probably an eighth of a.
It's done.
I'm going home now. I'm not going to work it.
Ready to go? Okay. Well, welcome to our special council meeting, Thursday, September 26th. I acknowledge we're holding this on the traditional lands of the Klamath Nation. We'll start with the adoption of the agenda. Please.
I'll move adoption.
Seconded. All in favor? Passed unanimously. I'll move to the proclamation for Canadian Library Month, and I'd like to acknowledge that the chair of the library board, Mr. Fabrizon, is with us this evening, so thank you for joining us. Whereas Canada's libraries foster lifelong learning, play a vital role in helping Canadians of all ages access the information and tools that they need to live, learn, and work, enable people to connect with others, foster the development of ideas and a broader awareness of each other, and inspire behavior based on understanding and dialogue, which are crucial to the success of diverse communities such as Powell River. And whereas the City of Powell River places great value on lifelong learning opportunities, the continuous building of skills and knowledge throughout a person's life, both formal and informal. And whereas the Cathet Region's public library and school libraries add immensely to the culture, creativity, professional, personal, and academic growth of Powell River residents by promoting and supporting lifelong learning. Whereas this October, communities coast to coast are celebrating the important role libraries play in enhancing the quality of life for all. Therefore, I, Mayor Ron Wasno, proclaim October 2024 as Canadian Library Month in the City of Powell River. And yes, Councillor Southcott.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to acknowledge our library and libraries in general in our community and our society. I was honored to be a library board member representing this council for 2 terms. And I've watched how libraries have expanded in service to community. I certainly absolutely acknowledge what was put in this proclamation, but the roles of libraries are expanding broadly to give people access to communication and information that is constantly changing in our world and providing even greater public services. Also, huge imagination and the lending of all sorts of things, including radon detectors and various other things that never were traditionally part of what was lent through a library. So I can see the roles expanding. And I also have to acknowledge the imagination of our library, particularly with one program over the years that I think is just phenomenal. It was to help young people, particularly those who were shy about reading, to learn how to read, and it is their Reading to Dogs program. I don't think I've come across anything that thrills me more than seeing that kind of program delivered. So I just couldn't sit here and not acknowledge and express my appreciation for what this amazing institution provides in our community. Thank you very much, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor. And I'd just like to add that I sat on the board, excuse me, of the library, not as a city representative, back as a board member when we were going through the discussion of getting a new library. And everything that is in the proclamation and what Councillor Southcott said was very important to us. And I have a long affinity for libraries. My mom brought us up with the phrase that you learn to read so you can read to learn. So we were quite happy to name a children's reading room after her at the library. And every time I go in there and I see 2-year-olds to 8-year-olds in there picking books out, I knew exactly what my mom had in mind. So thank you. I will now move to 5.1, which is Development Permit 383. Mr. Gao.
Afternoon, Council. Thank you for having me. The purpose of the report before you is to present applications for a development permit and associated development variance permit application that would facilitate a 60-unit townhouse development. I was thinking there might be a presentation, but perhaps that is on its way. If we could have the next slide, please. Great. These applications pertain to the property recently subdivided from 5201 Manson Avenue, which was a condition of zoning amendment 126, of which the associated bylaw was adopted by council 2 weeks ago. The property measures 1.72 hectares in size, which is about 4¼ acres. And it was cleared under a previously issued tree cutting permit in preparation for this development. The trees in and around the McGuffey Creek riparian area were retained, and those have subsequently been voluntarily dedicated to the city as parkland as part of a community amenity contribution for zoning amendment 126. So what you see on the screen here is a site plan for the development proposed. It consists of 60 units broken up into 12 buildings, each containing 5 units. The report before you highlights how the proposal aligns with the development permit area 1, which is a development permit area for multifamily development. Aspects considered include siting and orientation of buildings, view impact, facades, roof lines, exterior materials, parking and vehicular access, landscaping and outdoor spaces. And so without getting into the detail of what's provided in the report, I can say that the proposed development aligns with these guidelines. And attached to the staff report is Appendix F is a draft permit 383 for council's consideration. The draft permit includes a number of schedules that illustrate the form and character of the proposed development. So what I just kind of walked through here were the perspectives that were included as part of that application package. These aren't included as part of the schedules, and so I thought I'd let you see what else was attached to the development proposal. So you can see kind of an overhead view of the development, a series of interior streets connecting to a second or a more arterial interior street that connects up to Manson, sorry. Here's more in keeping with the view of somebody walking through one of those interior streets. Yeah, again, just the form of what's proposed. It's it's a unique development in terms of the forms. Obviously, the architect involved has a certain style, and that's actually what we're going to talk about very next. Because one of the aspects that council needs to consider a little further here in this particular application is the maximum building height of a principal building in the RM1 zone. The architect is proposing a design that does require a variance of up to 0.8 meters in height, and it's a little hard to see on the screen here, but this is the facade from Manson Avenue shown, and probably shows up a little bit better in your report, but there is a white dotted line around the areas of the building that protrude into that, beyond that maximum permitted height. And so the applicant has applied for a variance to allow for these particular extensions to extend beyond that 8.5 meters measured above average grade. Attached to the staff report is Appendix G is Draft Development Variance Permit 282 for your consideration. Staff anticipate that the proposed 0.8 meters of additional building height will have negligible impact and recommend that this committee direct staff to issue notice in accordance with Section 499 of the Local Government Act of Council's intention to consider issuance of Development Variance Permit 282 at a future meeting of Council. And I use that terminology, future meeting of Council, because of course it would really be Council's discretion based on what you do today, but I will tell you that we are prepared to mail out tomorrow if we get the direction we're looking for today, and then we'd be in a place to bring it back in 2 weeks' time on October the 10th. That completes my presentation.
Councillor Dote.
So, I see the plans here. We've got 2 development permits. So my understanding is if we approve this today, we're going to give notice that we're considering it. And I hear you saying it'll be back on what will probably be a very busy day on October the 10th. And that's nice. My question is, if we approve it then, how long is the time frame between that and being able to issue a building permit? Trying to look at how long this is going to take for the developer to actually get more work done on the property.
Through the chair to Councillor Dout, the very specific detail of how long I don't have, but I will tell you that I've been communicating with the building team and let them know that this is coming down the pipe. They've also had communication with the developer across the counter, and so we seem to be on the same page in terms of submission requirements, which is always a bit of a hang-up. If not all the submissions are provided, it's hard for us to be in a position to issue a building permit in a timely fashion. But it does sound like the communication between the builder and the building team and the developer have gone well, and the building team seems satisfied that the developer has what he needs to submit that building permit. We don't accept a building permit until a development permit is issued, and that's just standard practice. But I am giving them the heads up that I'm going to expect them to move quite quickly once that development permit is issued.
Thank you.
Yeah, yes.
Seeing no questions, I'm willing to make the first motion. I move that council direct staff to give notice in accordance with Section 499 of the Local Government Act of council's intention to consider issuance of Development Variance Permit 282 that proposes to vary the maximum building height of a principal building in the RM1 zone as defined in City of Powell River Zoning Bylaw 2100/2006 from 8.5 to 9.3 meters.
Second by Councillor Southcott. Any further questions? I will call the motion. All in favor? The motion is passed unanimously.
I can continue on if it's your.
Please.
I move that council direct staff to refer Development Variance Permit 282 to a future meeting of council for consideration to issue following issuance of the statutory notice.
Seconded by Councillor Southcott. Any further questions? I'll move the motion. All in favor? Motion passed unanimously.
And finally, I move that council direct staff to refer Development Permit 383 to a future meeting of council for consideration to issue, subject to receipt of the associated landscape security deposit to the satisfaction of the Director of Planning Services.
Seconded by Councillor Almeida. Any questions? All in favor? Passed unanimously. Thank you very much, Mr. Gao.
You're very welcome.
We'll now move to 5.2.
Thank you again. I'll start by saying this is maybe a good news, bad news story. I'll start with the bad news. The bad news is costs have escalated. This is just the state of our world today. So every project that we seem to have embarked on a number of years ago, we've gone back to get a cost estimate, more recent cost estimate, and seen that costs have escalated. The good news is that we have a grant that was actually already approved, and we are now able to accept it. So the story here is the mid-level connector project that started in 2022. Staff went out and sought grants that would be suitable for this particular project. We applied for a community forest grant of $450,000, which we were approved for. We also applied for two other grants, one from the Active Transportation Fund of, again, $450,000, and a third as kind of a backup. And this is from I believe it's the Clean BCs, but I'd have to check that. And actually, that grant was for $550,000 or just under $550,000. Being that the $550,000 was more, we opted to go with that. And the reason we were only looking at one of those is because we were running into this issue of what we refer to as federal stacking limits, meaning you can't stack two grants where the portion of federal funding exceeds a certain percentage. And so with the project estimated a couple of years ago at $750,000, we ran into that federal stacking issue. Today, as costs have escalated, and we're now looking at a project cost of $1.4 million, we no longer run into that federal stacking issue. And so we were able to reach out to the Active Transportation Funder and say, we'd like to reconnect with you and ask for that grant. And so the federal grantors at this point have been very welcoming and said, yes, that works for us. So what we need from you is an amendment to the 5-year capital plan that would allow us to accept that additional $450,000 grant towards this project.
Questions? Councillor Doat.
Got a couple. So first one is that, this is started out 750 and now it's almost 1.5 million. So it's pretty much a doubling of cost between a couple of years ago and now. It's going up pretty fast. And I'm just curious about the amount of contingency that there is in that $1.44 million dollar value there in the engineering design study, because
through the chair to Councillor Dow. Yeah, so 10% is typically what we would look at once we get to a place of an engineered design. So one of the things I'd point out is that $750,000 was framed around a conceptual design. And once the designers and the engineering company that was hired to do the design got into the field and started to see some of the challenges, and we're not just looking at flat grade, we're looking at bumpy grade that needs to be filled in, and we're looking at unit counts of materials. Things grow there, but a 10% contingency at a stage where you have an engineered drawing or design is comfortable from the perspective of the engineering team that we're working with here in-house.
the follow-up question is, we haven't put it out to tender for construction yet, have we?
Through the chair, no, we haven't.
Okay, so we don't really know what the final cost of bids is going to be until we actually see those.
Through the chair, that is correct.
That's my only concern.
Sorry.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, this has taken a while, and the cost certainly have basically doubled where we originally started out. I'm just wondering, in terms of, the need in the community, our finances, the maintenance that this is going to require from our Parks Board. I just wonder if the CFO has any comments that she would like to make in terms of the financial burden that, or good news this may bring.
Through the chair, Because this is fully externally grant funded and we do have a contingency set aside in the budget, it definitely wouldn't have impact on taxpayers. The cost of the maintenance and operational is certainly something that was discussed when the project was initially brought forward, and I believe staff are still very comfortable with the maintenance and operating costs. Should this require city funds, and that would be a different question, but because it's fully grant funded, this additional amount, which is unusual to secure the increase fully by grants, we have a lot less, no financial impact to taxpayers for the capital cost. But as I said, the operating and maintenance costs have been discussed by staff and were discussed initially with the project. And as far as life cycle costing analysis goes, and staff are in support of that.
The tenders back.
Through the chair, yes, with an initial design and going out to tender, we've got a good idea of what the cost will be. And then of course, once the tenders come in, we do another analysis at that point. And should the tenders show a cost even higher than what's approved in the budget, that's when we'd bring forward a report to council. Should that not be the case, then we'd be able to proceed.
Okay, through the chair, you can see some of our management team have come in because this is one of those integrated projects across teams. There is also the option that should we find ourselves with a shortfall with a grant, that we can phase and stage and work with the funders to do sections. My hope is that we are in a good place because staff were very successful in getting the additional grant that we can now use. But I thought I'd point out we also have Director of Engineering and Parks and Rec in the room with us now. Thank you.
So the question I have, and it's a result at the UBCM, I had a chance to dialogue with a number of mayors about innovative approaches they're taking to provide services, but to minimize the operational costs. And quite often they've gone to nonprofits who would take on the responsibility. So Powell River is well known for the excellent work the volunteers have done in maintaining trails all over Powell River and the Cathette region. Have we considered going to one of them or a number of them and asking them if they would like to participate with the city and take on the responsibility of maintenance?
Through the chair, I'm going to have Director Brexat speak to that. Thank you.
Through the chair, it's always dangerous to walk in partway through a conversation. I think I know what we're talking about. And it just so happens yesterday had a lengthy conversation with a representative of the bomb squad. Part of that conversation was them informing me that they're very informal in their structure and that they don't even have an actual membership, and that their membership is in decline, and they need to figure out ways to pass over some of their responsibilities over to us as the city. It was just an exploratory conversation, didn't go anywhere as far as actions go, but it was a very, very good conversation.
Yes.
Thank you, Mayor. Question about the grant. Was there any opportunity cost associated with this additional grant in the sense that there are other active transportation type things that could we have used that for anything else, or is that, was the easy ask of the grantor because they had already approved it? You could speak to that.
Through the chair, yes, to Councillor Isaacson, it was an easy ask because they'd already approved it. What we're finding with other grants where similar situation costs have escalated, it's not just an opportunity to use those grants for other projects without a bigger application process involved.
We have a motion like to put forward.
Like that. I move that council direct staff to prepare a budget amendment to the City of Powell River 5-year financial plan bylaw 2742-2024 to amend the mid-level connector project funding sources to include a $450,000 federal active transportation fund grant.
Seconded by Councillor Almeida. Any further questions before we call the vote? Councillor Southcott.
Thank you, Worship. I actually have a comment. This seems like a big project, but in the context that I see it, it brings it sort of back into scale. Being a lifelong cyclist, I'm really delighted to see this kind of thing happening in this community now. Before I came onto council, I think in the term prior to that, this city started in earnest planning for cycling and active transportation infrastructure. In fact, that was around the time where the term active transportation really came more into use. Cycling and walking being lumped together as more promising for the future in terms of sustainability and capability of populations as populations are changing in our society. See now, 12 years ago, I believe it was, or was it before that, $1 million was budgeted for in the capital budget. It was before 12 years ago. Toward active transportation over a 10-year period. In that period of time, less than half of that budgeted money was necessary from taxpayers, as if my memory serves me correctly, and I believe this is correct, because the projects taken on by the city were, to a considerable extent, paid for by senior government grant money. So the initiative really was rewarded by these senior governments who also have the vision to see where we're headed in this society. So this seems big, but it rests on a long history here and is it's a major component in connectivity that gets by one really particular stumbling block, which I still cycle, and that's the cut, and the connector between Westview and the town site. You still do see some cyclists there, and people do go up through Cranberry as well. But this is really going to connect, and I think as we move into the future, what is emerging is connectivity in so many ways. So I'm wholeheartedly support this, and I'm really delighted to see it come forward. And I'm blown away and very happy that the whole works is in grant money. Yes, the community forest has contributed, but the senior governments are contributing substantially to this, and that's I'm really happy to see that. So thank you.
I don't want to take up too much time. I know we all want to get home before the rain and the hurricane starts, but I just want to point out that what we do have is $450,000 grant from the Powell River Community Forest, $550,000 from Clean BC Communities, and $450,000 grant from Active Transportation Fund. So those are all grant funds. There's no taxpayer dollars going into that. And as long as we don't have cost overruns that increase between now and the time it's completed and the project management works out, we're going to get an active transportation connector that actually connects town site and Westview with a separated bike path that's off of the highways. So hopefully we would not be having traffic conflicts along Cranberry Street and down the hill to town site, where I see people riding bicycles now in a very dangerous way because there's really no shoulder to get off on. So it's going to provide a link there. It's also a link in what Sunshine Coast Tourism was touting as a bike off highway bicycle link all the way from Langdale Ferry Terminal all the way up to Lund. And, it's a short piece, but, we're filling in part of that puzzle there. And I think a lot of people are looking forward to that bicycle connection route. We've heard lots of delegations, and I'm excited to see this going ahead. I'd like to see it finished and people riding their bikes and various means of transportation there. So it's an exciting time.
I'd like to comment that I appreciate what the bomb squad has to say. I think there's fundamental differences. A lot of what the bomb squad does is up in high country. They're building bridges. They're bringing, chainsaws in. Not easy to get those in, helicopters, etc. I would suggest that staff put a little bit of effort, and certainly as mayor, I would be willing to put the message out there, because as Councillor Southcott said, we got a lot of young energy that like to ride bikes, that like to trail, so they may want to learn what the bomb squad has done outside of the city and take on in whole or part of the maintenance of this. So we have a motion on the floor. All in favor? Motion is passed unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Gao. Now move to bylaw number 6. Mr. Gao.
Thank you again. This is, I'm just looking through the recommendation. There's going to be some work here for council should you move the recommendation, so I apologize in advance. The purpose of this report is to provide or present draft bylaw amendments to the city's Sustainable Official Community Plan, the zoning and building bylaws to distinguish modular homes from mobile homes. And this work was started last year in September, and due to other priorities, it got sidelined for a little while. But we wanted to make sure that we wrap this up before too much time passed. And so that's why I'm bringing it to you today. So as I said, we're dealing with amendments to the SOCP, our zoning bylaw, and the building bylaw. And the key is really going back to when the Sustainable Official Community Plan was prepared in 2014. There was the use of the term modular instead of mobile, and it's created some problems for us in terms of how we regulate those types of buildings. And so the bylaws before you today are, for lack of a better term, housekeeping, and that we would like to address the distinction between a mobile home and a modular home. So as it relates to the Sustainable Official Community Plan, change existing modular home park, and modular dwelling references to instead refer to mobile home and mobile home parks. As it relates to the zoning bylaw, update definitions for dwelling, manufactured home, a mobile home park, and introduce mobile home and modular home definitions. Also permit the use of modular home as a principal or detached accessory dwelling wherever a dwelling is permitted, and prohibit the use of a mobile home as a dwelling except where provided in a zone such as the R4 mobile home park zone. And then lastly, the building bylaw amendments, update definitions for a manufactured home and modular home, introduce mobile home park definitions, and remove references to modular homes in Part 8 and Part 20, and then change reference to modular home to mobile home in Schedule A permit fees. Because council has seen this before, I was going to leave it there, but I'd be more than happy to walk you through the specific changes if you felt like you wanted to see that. They were included as Schedules E through G attached to the report. It pretty clearly lays out the changes that we're talking about. Really, it's making the distinction between modular and mobile, where modular had been incorrectly used for many years, and it really should be mobile. And the goal here is so that we can see more modular home construction being built throughout our communities in any place that permits a dwelling. And then mobiles would still be limited to mobile home parks in the R4 zone. But again, I'm more than happy to walk you through the specifics if there's something key that's sticking out for you that you want a little bit more info on.
Any questions for Mr. Gao? Councillor Southcott.
Thank you, Mayor. in the case of existing what are mobile homes that may have been installed through the municipality outside the R4 area or zones, will there be any consequences or down the road? I would imagine such structures would be existing non-conforming, but are there any other consequences that are anticipated for them?
Through the chair to Councillor Southcott, you're correct. We're talking about legal nonconformance in relationship to use. So these are permitted to continue operating as they were constructed legally at a time when these units were allowed. I mean, that applies to many different situations in our community. The idea of consequences is a bigger one. So the city would never be in a place to go out and make people change things. However, if somebody was to come in and wanted to modify something that was legally non-conforming as to use, there are some challenges associated with that. The goal of legal non-conformance as to use is really to ensure that that use over time is no longer viable there. So upgrades that relate to structural improvements of a structure that's legally non-conforming as to use are not permitted without some form of variance. So yes, there could be some consequences, but in terms of people that are continuing to use their mobile home that's constructed in a situation that we wouldn't allow today, no, there's nothing that the city would undertake.
I noted Councillor Dout's interest in finishing before the hurricane hits us. Do we have a consensus that we could deal with the 1 to 12 motions altogether? Is that appropriate?
Through the chair, I'm just asking. I think that will work fine as long as it's clear that council's has the agenda. Just very clear that I think we can do that. Thank you.
Councillor Almeida.
Do I need to read them all then too, or just can we say as written in the package and save us all half an hour?
Yes, I'll say I will live with any consequences of that, but I believe we can do that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Give that a go then. I will move then all 12 recommendations as listed in the agenda package for council to approve.
Councillor Southcott. All in favor? Oh, sorry, Councillor Dout.
I don't want to go through this too fast because it can seem if someone's watching on the wonderful TV monitors that they have at home that we're going through this awfully quickly for a major change. And I just want to point out that we've been talking about this for a number of years. It adds an important aspect to new home construction in the city that was previously unavailable to these changes. It allows people to buy manufactured modular homes and place them on a foundation in a lot within the city. And it's a different kind of housing than we've been able to build in the city before because of the definitions between a mobile home and a modular home. It allows things to be basically factory manufactured and moved to the site, can have savings on labor when labor is a particular shortage because there's a building boom going on in town. And an example of what I think is a good community based on that is in the regional district up at the end of Nootka Street, there's a modular home operation going in there. It's a strata outfit, and there's some pretty pleasant homes, and a lot of seniors that are living up there have told me it's a great way to live. So I think this is a big advancement, and we're not doing this in 10 minutes. It's been thought of by our planning department for a long time.
Excuse me, Councillor Palm.
Yeah, appreciate Councillor Dout's comments, and one question did come to mind, and that is, I'm not sure if it's referred to in the report, but I didn't see it, and that is, if a modular home is built on a foundation, do they have to meet the existing step code that we're abiding by?
Through the chair to Councillor Baum, that is a good question. And on first glance, I would say it's a dwelling unit being constructed in our community and therefore would need to meet the BC Building Code as we applied in our building bylaw. So the step code that currently applies in our community is what would be required. Yes.
Yep.
If I can add one last little bit to that, I think actually one of the benefits of modular construction is that when that is communicated at an early stage, that's actually very easy for a home or a modular home builder to make the modifications required to meet step code that's required in a community.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
A motion on the floor. All in favor? Motion is passed unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Gao.
Thank you.
Now move to new business. It's a joint statement from the City of Powell River, Githet Regional District, and the Klama Nation regarding National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. We have a recommendation from staff. Somebody like to, yes, Councillor Isaacson.
Move that council endorses the joint statement from the City of Powell River, the Githet Regional District, and the Klama Nation regarding National Day for Truth and Reconciliation on Monday, September 30th, 2024.
Seconded by Councillor Southcott. Yes, Councillor Isaacson.
I'll just speak to it really briefly to give people context of what we're voting on. So there will be a joint event on Monday that we've mentioned, I believe, before in council chambers, although I forget when we've met last. And so there is an event at starting at 10 a.m. on Monday in acknowledgement of the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation, commemorating and acknowledging residential school survivors and the children that never came home. And so in addition to the events of the day, where there will be words shared from the Regional District Chair, from Mayor Wasno and Jesus John Hackett, there will be a walk down to Willingdon Beach starting at about 11 a.m., march to Willingdon Beach or Ajimu. And so this is a joint statement from the three governments who are involved in commemorating this day that can be distributed as a part of this day. And I think speaks to our attempts to work together on issues that we mutually care about. Thank you.
We have a motion. I'd like to call all in favor. Motion is passed unanimously. Thank you. But we'll now go to questions. Mr. Galinsky. Mr. Galinsky has changed his mind.
I did, Your Worship. Thanks for the opportunity to pose some questions. My questions are with regard to the mid-level connector project. I am wondering if the route for this project has been clearly delineated in the preparation for the matter to go to design.
To Mr. Galinsky, in terms of the design drawings, yes, they clearly lay out the path that will be taken, yes.
I'm wondering where, adjacent to the recreation complex, Mayor, that this project will start and where adjacent to Brooks it will end. Is there any determination along those lines, I'm wondering?
And I can describe it to you here, but I could also provide you with some visuals that might help if you're thinking about including it in a story.
That's fantastic. If the manager could, director could do that, that would be very helpful. I'm wondering, it seemed to recall that the mid-level connector is about 3 meters in width. Am I correct in that assumption?
You are correct, yes.
And I'm wondering about the surfacing of that connector. Is it going to be a paved connector, or will it be some kind of gravel use?
It will be a gravel surface.
Thank you very much, Director. I appreciate that, and I appreciate the opportunity, Mayor, to ask questions.
Thank you, Mr. Galinsky. Do we have any questions from the audience? Do we have any questions online? give them another 15 seconds. Okay, could we have a motion to go into closed? Councilor Armida.
Move that following the adjournment of this meeting, council move into a closed meeting to discuss matters covered by the community charter under section 90.1, C, labor relations or other employee relations, E, the acquisition, disposition, or expropriation of land or improvements, if the council considers that disclosure could reasonably be expected to harm the interests of the municipality. And 90, section 2B, the consideration of information received and held in confidence relating to negotiations between the municipality and a provincial government or the federal government or both, or between a provincial government or the federal government or both and a third party.
Have a seconder? Councilor Isaacsson, second. All in favor? Passed unanimously. Thank you very much. We will now take a short break.